The whir of my custom-built PC was usually a soothing symphony, the soundtrack to my perfectly orchestrated life. My name is Trinity, and I'm a freelance graphic designer and web developer. My clients are global, my deadlines are my own, and my office, a sun-drenched sanctuary in the home I adore, is my command center. The centerpiece? My powerhouse laptop, a sleek beast I'd poured a small fortune and countless hours into customizing. It wasn't just a tool, it was an extension of my brain, the conduit for my creativity, and frankly, my entire income. I was just putting the finishing touches on a branding package for a new eco-friendly startup, a dreamy client who actually paid on time, when Xander walked in. My husband. Usually, his entrance was a welcome break, a chance for a quick kiss or a shared laugh. But today, he had that look, the one that screamed, "I have news, and you're not going to like it, but please don't shoot the messenger." He leaned against the doorframe, hands shoved deep into his pockets. "Hey, Trin, what you working on?" "Just finishing up the Greenleaf logo. They love the latest mock-ups," I said, spinning in my chair to face him, a smile on my lips. It faded when I saw his expression more clearly. "What's up? You look like you've seen a ghost." He shuffled his feet. I was just on the phone with Mom." My stomach did a little flip. Angela, his mother. The woman who believed my career was a cute little hobby I indulged in, while Xander, bless his real job in middle management, brought home the actual bacon. "Oh?" I kept my voice neutral, a skill honed over 5 years of marriage and countless family gatherings. "Yeah, well, they were thinking, you know Dad's birthday is next month, and Chloe's got that week off from her course." He was rambling, a sure sign he was bracing for impact. "Xander spit it out. They want to come for a visit, a family reunion sort of, here, for a week." He finally blurted it out, then watched me, wincing. A week. 7 days. 168 hours. With Angela, his passive-aggressive father Paul, and their mini-me daughter Chloe all under my roof. My carefully curated, peaceful, productive roof. The whir of the PC suddenly sounded like a warning siren. "Here?" I managed, my voice a little tighter than I intended. "For a whole week?" "Yeah, I know it's a bit sudden, but Mom said it's the only time they can all make it work." She sounded really excited. Excited? Angela's excitement usually translated into a week-long critique of my life choices, my home decor, my cooking, and, most pointedly, my little computer business. I remembered their last visit, a long weekend that felt like a month. Angela had helpfully reorganized my spice rack alphabetically, wrongly I might add, commented that my guest towels were a bit thin, dear, and asked Xander in front of me if he was sure Trinity was eating enough. She looks a bit stressed from all that screen staring. "Xander," I began, trying to keep the rising panic out of my voice. "You remember what happened last time, right? The helpful suggestions about my time management? The comments about how a proper career would offer me more stability?" My personal favorite was when she'd picked up one of my design awards, a sleek glass obelisk, squinted at it, and said, "Oh, that's nice. Do they give these out for participation?" He winced. "Okay, yeah, Mum can be a bit direct, but she means well." "Means well?" I stood up, pacing the small space between my desk and the window. She implied my portfolio was something a teenager could whip up on a free app. She told Chloe, loud enough for me to hear, that it was a shame I didn't have a real boss to keep me on track. She's just old-fashioned, Trin. She doesn't understand freelancing. "She doesn't want to understand it," I corrected. "She sees it as me not contributing properly, as me being some sort of dilettante playing on the computer while you work hard." The injustice of it always got to me. I often worked longer hours than Xander, juggling multiple clients and tight deadlines. My income was substantial, a fact Angela conveniently ignored. "It won't be that bad," he cajoled, stepping forward, trying to take my hands. "I'll talk to her. I'll make sure she behaves." I pulled my hands away, not unkindly, but firmly. "You said that last time, Xander. And the time before that. Remember when she accidentally watered my prize-winning orchid with leftover coffee because plants like a bit of a treat? The orchid, needless to say, did not survive the treat." He sighed, running a hand through his hair. "Look, I know they're not perfect, but they're my family. It's just a week. We can handle it. For me?" He gave me the puppy dog eyes, the ones that usually worked. I looked around my office, my sanctuary. I thought of the deadlines looming, the client calls scheduled, the sheer mental energy my work required. All of that, juxtaposed with Angela's running commentary, Paul's silent enabling, and Chloe's parroted criticisms. A wave of exhaustion washed over me before they'd even packed their bags. But then I looked at Xander. He loved his family, despite their quirks, and he was, at heart, a good man who just wanted everyone to get along. The eternal optimist. Bless his conflict-avoidant soul. "Okay," I said, the word tasting like ash in my mouth. "Okay, Xander. For you. 1 week." His face lit up. "Great. See? It'll be fine. They'll be thrilled." He leaned in and kissed me. "Thanks, Trin. You're the best." As he walked out, practically skipping, I sank back into my chair. The PC still hummed, but now it sounded like a countdown timer. I voiced my lingering concerns as he reached the hallway. "I just hope this isn't a repeat of last Christmas, Xander. I really can't handle another lecture on the transient nature of internet money." He paused at the door, turning back with a reassuring smile, though his eyes didn't quite match it. "Come on, Trin. They're family. What's the worst that could happen in a week?" Oh, if only he knew. A cold dread settled in my stomach, a premonition that this visit wouldn't just be annoying, it would be a battle, and I had a sinking feeling I was already on the losing side. The Kings arrived on a Tuesday, right on schedule, like a perfectly timed storm. The doorbell chimed, and I took a deep breath, plastering on what I hoped was a welcoming smile. Xander, bless his heart, was practically vibrating with a nervous energy that he probably thought was excitement. "They're here!" he announced unnecessarily as he flung open the door. And there they were. Angela, his mother, front and center, her smile a little too tight, her eyes already scanning our porch like a building inspector looking for code violations. Paul, his father, hovered behind her, offering a vague, non-committal wave. And Chloe, Xander's younger sister, was glued to her phone, barely glancing up. "Xander, darling," Angela chirped, enveloping him in a hug that seemed to last just a fraction too long, her gaze sweeping past him to land on me. "And Trinity, so good to see you, dear." Her smile didn't quite reach her eyes. It rarely did when directed at me. "Welcome," I said, trying to inject warmth into my voice. "Come on in. Let me help you with your bags." "Oh, no need, dear. Paul can manage," Angela said, breezing past me into the hallway. Her first official act on our soil was to run a finger along the console table. I resisted the urge to check if she'd found dust. "Your hallway is compact, isn't it?" And so it began. Xander, oblivious, or perhaps willfully ignorant, beamed. "Mom, Dad, Chloe, make yourselves at home." They took him at his word. Within minutes, their suitcases exploded in the guest room. Coats were draped over the back of my favorite armchair, and Chloe had commandeered the best spot on the sofa, already asking for the Wi-Fi password with the urgency of a paramedic demanding a defibrillator. Angela surveyed the living room, her head tilted. "You've redecorated since our last visit, haven't you, Trinity? It's very minimalist." I knew minimalist was her code for bare or lacking. My carefully chosen mid-century modern pieces, The ones I'd lovingly sourced and saved for apparently didn't meet her standards of cozy clutter. Yes, we updated a few things, I replied, keeping my smile fixed. She said, her gaze lingering on a new abstract painting I adored. Interesting choice. Chloe, looking up from her phone for a nanosecond, snickered. Paul just grunted in what I assumed was agreement with his wife. The first 24 hours were a masterclass in passive aggression and blatant disregard for personal space. They treated my home like a slightly disappointing all-inclusive resort. Wet towels were left on the bathroom floor, empty coffee mugs materialized on every available surface, and the TV volume was always just a little too loud. I found myself constantly tidying up after them, biting back frustrated sighs. The first accident occurred that very evening. I'd made lasagna, a crowd pleaser, or so I thought. Angela had picked at hers, commenting that it was a bit rich for her taste. Later, as I was clearing the table, she gestured expansively while recounting some neighborhood gossip to Xander and knocked her half-full glass of red wine directly onto my cream-colored antique rug in the dining area. "Oh dear!" she exclaimed, hand flying to her chest. "How clumsy of me!" Then she looked down at the rapidly spreading stain. "Though, Trinity, perhaps it wasn't the wisest decision to have such a pale rug right here, where people are eating and drinking." My jaw tightened. "I'll get some soda water," I said through gritted teeth. Xander rushed to help, dabbing ineffectually at the stain with a napkin. "Don't worry, Mom, it's fine," he said, shooting me an apologetic look. Later, as I was scrubbing the rug with specialized cleaner, the wine stains stubbornly refusing to completely disappear, Xander found me. "They're just settling in, honey," he whispered, rubbing my shoulder. "Give them a chance." A chance? They'd been here less than a day, and had already managed to insult my decor, treat me like a maid, and damage a cherished possession. I looked up at him, my frustration bubbling. "Settling in, Xander, or staking their claim?" he sighed. "Don't be dramatic, Trin." But I wasn't being dramatic. I could feel the walls of my own home closing in on me, and it was Angela's eyes that bothered me the most. I'd catch her looking at my office door, a strange, speculative gleam in them. It was the same look she got right before she decided to helpfully reorganize something or offer an unsolicited soul-crushing critique. That night, tucked into bed, the silence of the house felt different, charged. I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying Angela's little digs, Paul's silent complicity, Chloe's smirks. Xander was already asleep beside me, breathing evenly, untroubled. I slipped out of bed and crept down the hallway. As I passed the guest room, I heard voices. Angela and Chloe, whispering. I paused, my heart thumping. I knew I shouldn't eavesdrop, but I couldn't help myself. "Honestly, that ridiculous office of hers," Angela was saying, her voice dripping with disdain. "All those computers. It's like she thinks she's running NASA." Chloe giggled. "And did you see her face when you spilled the wine, Mom? Priceless." "She really needs to learn her place," Angela continued, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial murmur. "This little work-from-home fantasy isn't going to last forever. Xander needs a wife who can support him properly, not one who plays on the internet all day." My blood, which had been simmering gently all day, began to boil. Fantasy? Learn my place? I clenched my fists, nails digging into my palms. This wasn't just about a messy house or a stained rug anymore. This was a direct assault on my life, my career, my very identity. And they were just getting started. The week stretched before me, a gauntlet of microaggressions and thinly veiled contempt. My cooking, usually a source of pride, was suddenly too adventurous. Angela pushing aside a quinoa salad. A bit bland. Paul eyeing a delicately seasoned fish. Or, totally trying too hard. Chloe poking at a homemade pasta dish. My schedule, which I meticulously managed to balance work and life, was deemed too relaxed for someone who claims to be working. Angela, in particular, seemed to find endless ways to bring this up. "Are you taking another break, dear?" she'd ask, her voice laced with faux concern, if she saw me making a cup of tea mid-morning. "When I had a proper job, we only got 15 minutes. Or, "Still in your loungewear at lunchtime, Trinity? Most offices have a dress code, you know. It helps with productivity." She made daily pronouncements on the unparalleled benefits of a real job with a proper boss and a pension plan. These were usually directed at Xander, but loud enough for me to hear from my office. "You know, Xander, a stable career path is so important for a young couple. Benefits, sick pay. Trinity should really consider looking for something more secure. For your sake, son." Minor accidents continued to plague my existence. A framed photo of Xander and me, taken on our honeymoon, was found face down on the mantelpiece, the glass cracked. "Oh, I was just dusting," Chloe had trilled, not looking sorry at all. My favorite oversized coffee mug, the one that held just the right amount of caffeine to kickstart my brain, developed a mysterious chip on the rim after Angela helpfully did the dishes. "These modern ceramics are so fragile, aren't they?" she'd remarked. I started a mental catalogue. Each slight, each accident, each backhanded compliment filed away. The stress was immense. I was trying to meet a crucial deadline for a new client, a project that could lead to significant ongoing work, but the constant interruptions and the oppressive atmosphere made concentration nearly impossible. My carefully constructed piece was shattered into a million irritating pieces. One evening, after a particularly trying dinner, where Angela had spent a good 10 minutes extolling the virtues of her friend's daughter, who had sensibly given up her artistic career to marry a sensible accountant, I finally snapped. Not outwardly, of course. That wasn't my style, and it would only give Angela ammunition. But inside, a cold, hard knot of resentment tightened. Later that evening, I found Xander in the kitchen, making himself a sandwich. The in-laws were monopolizing the living room, watching some loud game show Paul insisted on. "Xander," I began, keeping my voice low, "we need to talk about your mother." He sighed, not even turning from the counter. "Trin, can this wait? I'm trying to unwind." "No, it can't," I insisted. "She's actively trying to undermine me. Today, it was another lecture about how I should get a real job. Yesterday, it was my cooking. The day before, my decor. It's constant." He finally faced me, a slice of ham halfway to his mouth. "She's just concerned. She doesn't get what you do." "Concerned?" I scoffed. "She told Chloe last night that my career is a fantasy and that I need to learn my place. I overheard them, Xander. She thinks I'm not good enough for you because I don't have a 9 to 5. He put the sandwich down, his expression troubled, but not in the way I'd hoped. "You were eavesdropping? That's not the point," I exclaimed, my voice rising despite my efforts. "The point is what she said, what they're all doing. Paul just sits there and nods, and Chloe eggs her on. This isn't a visit, Xander. It's an endurance test, and I'm failing." He ran a hand over his face. "Trinity, you're being too sensitive. They're just old-fashioned. They don't mean any harm. Mom's always been a bit blunt. You know that." "Blunt?" My voice was dangerously quiet now. "She's deliberately cruel, Xander, and old-fashioned is not an excuse for disrespect. This is my home. This is my life she's tearing apart piece by piece." "Don't exaggerate," he said, his tone becoming defensive. "They're my family. Can't you just try to get along for a few more days? For me?" His dismissal, the casual way he invalidated everything I was feeling, stung more than any of Angela's carefully crafted barbs. He didn't see it, or he didn't want to. Either way, I was on my own. "Fine," I said, my voice flat. "A few more days." I turned and walked out of the kitchen, the cold knot in my stomach solidifying into something else. Resolve. If he wouldn't stand up for me, if he couldn't or wouldn't see the deliberate malice behind their old-fashioned ways, then I would have to find my own way to manage this, to protect myself, my home, my sanity. I went straight to my office, the one place that still felt like mine, even though Angela's disapproving aura seemed to seep under the door. I sat at my desk, the glow of the monitor illuminating my face. My fingers flew across the keyboard, not on client work, but on Amazon. Miniature security cameras, discreet, Wi-Fi enabled, with good night vision. Old-fashioned? I muttered to myself as I scanned the product descriptions, Xander's dismissive words echoing in my ears. No, Xander, they're malicious, and I'm done being sensitive. I found a pack of 2 small, easily concealable cameras, one for the living room, angled towards the sofa and the area where most of the accidents seemed to happen, and one for my office, just in case. The Add to Cart button felt incredibly satisfying. Clicking Confirm Purchase with next-day delivery felt even better. A tiny sliver of control in a situation where I felt utterly powerless. The next morning, the siege continued. Angela was in rare form. She'd decided my houseplants needed more discipline. "This one is far too leggy, Trinity," she announced, holding up my beloved Monstera, its leaves drooping slightly from her inexpert handling. "You should prune it back, aggressively." She then proceeded to helpfully snap off a perfectly healthy new leaf. "There, see? Much tidier." I just smiled tightly. "Thank you, Angela. So helpful." Inside, I was already mentally positioning the cameras. Chloe, meanwhile, had discovered my collection of artisanal teas. "Ugh, what even is this?" she'd said, holding up a tin of expensive oolong. "Smells like old socks." She then proceeded to make herself a cup of the cheapest black tea bags I kept for emergencies, leaving the oolong tin open on the counter. Paul, as usual, contributed little beyond appreciative grunts whenever Angela landed a particularly sharp verbal jab. He did, however, manage to leave a damp ring from his coffee cup on my antique wooden coffee table, a piece I'd painstakingly restored. No coaster, of course. Xander, attempting to play peacemaker, suggested a family outing. "Let's all go to the botanical gardens," he'd said brightly at breakfast. "Oh, I don't know, dear," Angela had replied, eyeing my plate. I was having a small bowl of Greek yogurt and berries. Trinity looks like she needs to stay home and work on her projects. We wouldn't want to distract her from her important computer things. The sarcasm was thick enough to spread on toast. I just smiled. "Actually, Angela, a bit of fresh air sounds lovely, but I do have a client call this afternoon I can't miss." Her eyes narrowed slightly. The cameras were due to arrive by noon. The thought was a small, secret comfort. The game was changing, though only I knew it. The Amazon package arrived just before lunch, a discreet brown box that felt heavier than its contents. I managed to intercept the delivery driver, whisking it into my office before anyone else saw it. The botanical garden trip had been predictably tense. Angela had criticized the city's lack of funding for public spaces, Paul had complained about the walking, and Chloe had spent the entire time on her phone, sighing dramatically whenever anyone tried to engage her in conversation about, plants. My client call was scheduled for 2 p.m. At 1:30 p.m., I excused myself, claiming I needed to prepare. "Don't let us disturb your important work, dear," Angela had called after me, her voice dripping with false sweetness. Once in my office, door firmly shut, I worked quickly. The cameras were tiny, smaller than my thumb. One I tucked onto a high bookshelf in the living room, nestled between some art books, its lens peeking out almost invisibly. It had a perfect view of the sofa, the coffee table, and the path to the dining area. Prime accident territory. The second one was for my office. This one felt more personal, more invasive, But after Angela's earlier comments about my computer things, I knew it was necessary. I positioned it on a shelf above my monitor, angled down towards my desk, my chair, and crucially, my laptop. I connected them to the discrete app on my phone, checking the feeds. Crystal clear. I was just adjusting the angle of the office camera when Xander walked in without knocking. My heart leaped into my throat. "Hey, just checking if you needed anything before your call," he said. Then his eyes fell on the small device in my hand. "What's that?" he asked, his brow furrowing. I quickly placed it on the shelf. "Oh, just a new webcam," I said, trying to sound casual. The old one was getting a bit fuzzy. He looked at it, then at me, a flicker of suspicion in his eyes. "Looks pretty small for a webcam." "It's one of those new compact ones," I improvised. "Better resolution, smaller footprint." I gestured vaguely towards my monitor. "Technology, you know?" He didn't look entirely convinced, but my client would be calling any minute. "Right, well, good luck with the call." He hesitated, then added, "Try not to let Mom get to you too much, okay? She's just being Mom." I forced a smile. "Will do." As soon as he left, I let out a shaky breath. That was too close. But the cameras were in place. A small, grim satisfaction settled in. Now, all I had to do was wait. The client call went well, despite the low thrum of anxiety in my stomach. I managed to compartmentalize, to focus on the designs, the feedback, the deadlines. But the moment I hung up, the reality of the house, of my unwelcome guests, crashed back in. I emerged from my office an hour later, needing coffee. Angela was in the kitchen, helpfully, rearranging my pantry. "Oh, Trinity dear," she said, holding up a bag of my favorite organic quinoa. "I was just trying to make some sense of this. You have so many unusual ingredients. Do you actually use all of this?" "Yes, Angela, I do," I said, reaching for the coffee machine. "It's just that, well, it seems rather extravagant for someone who, you know..." She trailed off, letting the implication hang in the air. Someone who doesn't have a real job. Someone who enjoys cooking with quality ingredients? I finished for her, my voice polite but firm. She gave a tight little smile. "If you say so, dear." Later that afternoon, I was working at my desk when I heard a small commotion from the living room, followed by Chloe's theatrical gasp. "Oh my God, Mom, look!" I tensed. My first instinct was to rush out, but I made myself stay put. Let the cameras do their job. I discreetly opened the app on my phone, tapping into the living room feed. The video showed Chloe pointing at the floor near the sofa. Angela was peering down, a hand to her mouth. Then, Angela bent down and picked something up. It was one of my ceramic coasters, a beautiful, hand-painted one I'd bought on a trip to Santa Fe. Or rather, it was 2 pieces of my ceramic coaster. "Oh, clumsy me," Angela said, though her voice, caught by the camera's microphone, lacked any genuine remorse. "It must have slipped right off the table. These modern glazes are so slippery, aren't they?" She then casually tossed the broken pieces into the nearby wastebasket. Chloe giggled. "Oops." I watched them, my blood turning to ice. There was no accidental nudge, no slip. The coaster had been sitting safely on the table. I rewound the footage slightly. There. Angela, walking past the coffee table, had subtly, almost imperceptibly, flicked it with her finger as she passed. It wasn't a clumsy accident. It was deliberate, small, petty, but undeniably deliberate. My breath caught in my chest. It was one thing to suspect, to feel the constant barrage of negativity. It was another to see it, recorded, undeniable. Xander came home from work to a strained silence. I didn't mention the coaster. I didn't mention the pantry raid. I just watched, and I waited. The evidence was accumulating. That evening, After the in-laws had retired to their room, Angela complaining loudly about the lumpy pillows, my brand new, hypoallergenic memory foam pillows, I sat in my office, reviewing the day's footage. The broken coaster, Angela's snide remarks in the kitchen, captured with surprising clarity, Chloe rolling her eyes every time I spoke. Paul. Well, Paul mostly just existed, a silent, passive enabler. It was sickening and infuriating, but also, strangely, empowering. I wasn't just imagining it. I wasn't too sensitive. It was real. Xander found me there, staring at the screen, my face grim. He looked over my shoulder. The footage of Angela breaking the coaster was playing. The color drained from his face. Trinity, what is this? Are you spying on my family? He demanded, his voice a horrified whisper. I turned to face him, my own expression hard. I'm documenting, Xander. There's a difference. Documenting what? Them living in our house? This is insane. His voice rose, laced with disbelief and anger. You put cameras in our living room? In your office? Without telling me? I put cameras in my house to protect my property and my sanity, I retorted, my own anger flaring. Because you refuse to see what's happening. Because you keep telling me I'm too sensitive, while your mother systematically tries to destroy everything I care about, one accident at a time. Destroy everything? He laughed, a harsh, incredulous sound. She broke a coaster, Trinity, a $10 coaster. And for that, you've turned our home into a surveillance state? You're acting paranoid and vindictive. It's not just the coaster, Xander. It's everything. It's the constant criticism, the deliberate sabotage, the way she looks at my work, at me, like I'm something she scraped off her shoe. My voice was shaking now. I showed you proof, clear as day, that she broke it on purpose, and you're still defending her. I'm not defending her. I'm shocked that you would go to such lengths. This is my mother, my sister. This isn't how you solve family problems, Trinity. You talk, you communicate. I've tried talking, I yelled back. I've tried communicating with you, and all I get is, they're old-fashioned. She means well. Don't be so sensitive. You've left me no choice. We stood there, glaring at each other, the chasm between us wider than it had ever been. The happy, loving couple felt like a distant memory. In their place were two strangers, hurt and angry. This is insane, Trinity! You're going to destroy our family! Xander finally yelled, his face contorted with a mixture of anger and pain. He turned on his heel and stormed out of the office, slamming the bedroom door behind him hard enough to rattle the frame. I sank back into my chair, trembling. He was sleeping on the couch. Our first time ever. My heart ached with a pain so sharp, it stole my breath. I looked back at the screen, at the footage of Angela sneering at my turned back earlier that day, after her pantry reorganization. Some things, I thought, the words a bitter taste in my mouth, are worth fighting for, even if it means breaking others apart. The path I was on was lonely, and it was costing me dearly. But I wouldn't back down. Not now. The next morning, the house was a mausoleum of unspoken words. Xander had left for work before I even got out of bed. The dented cushion on the sofa the only evidence he'd slept there. The silence from the guest room was equally deafening. I made coffee, the clink of the mug against the counter sounding unnaturally loud. Angela, Paul, and Chloe eventually emerged, their expressions carefully neutral, though I caught Angela shooting me a sharp, assessing glance. Breakfast was a stilted affair. Even Chloe seemed to sense the shift in atmosphere, keeping her snarky comments to a minimum. The tension, however, was a coiled spring, and Angela, it seemed, was determined to be the one to make it snap. I had a crucial video call scheduled for mid-morning with my most important client, a tech startup that accounted for nearly 40% of my income. We were finalizing the details of a major website overhaul, a project I'd been working on for months. The pressure was immense, even without the added stress of a hostile home environment and a marital crisis. I retreated to my office, shutting the door firmly, hoping the physical barrier would be enough. I took a few deep breaths, smoothed my hair, and plastered on my most professional smile as the video call connected. "Good morning, Mr. Henderson," I said, my voice betraying none of the turmoil churning inside me. "Good to see you." "Trinity, always a pleasure," he replied, his image clear on my main monitor. "So, are we ready to nail down these final specs?" We dove into the details: user interface adjustments, back-end integrations, mobile responsiveness. I was in my element, focused, articulate, my expertise shining through. For a blissful 20 minutes, I almost forgot about the viper's nest just outside my door. Almost. Suddenly, without a knock, without a sound, my office door creaked open. Angela waltzed in, a teacup rattling precariously on its saucer in her hand. "Oh, Trinity dear, I thought you might like a cup of tea," she announced, her voice bright and entirely too loud. "You've been cooped up in here for ages." My heart hammered against my ribs. Mr. Henderson, a 60-something CEO known for his exacting standards and no-nonsense attitude, raised an eyebrow on screen. "Angela, I'm on a very important call," I said, my voice tight, trying to keep the panic from showing. I angled my body slightly, hoping to block her from Mr. Henderson's view, though her voice was unavoidable. "Oh, don't mind me, dear," she said, completely unfazed. She advanced towards my desk. "I'll just pop this down for you. You look like you could use a break. All this screen time can't be good for your eyes." She reached my desk, and instead of just placing the tea down, she began to tidy. She picked up a stack of my meticulously organized project notes, tutting. "My, what a clutter. It's a wonder you can find anything in here." She moved them, placing them precariously close to the edge of the desk. Then, her elbow, accidentally, bumped the power cord to my secondary monitor, making the screen flicker wildly. "Angela, please!" I hissed, my professional composure cracking. I reached out to steady the monitor. Mr. Henderson cleared his throat. "Trinity, is everything all right there?" "Just a small interruption, Mr. Henderson. My apologies," I said, forcing a smile that felt like a grimace. "My mother-in-law was just bringing me some tea." Angela, oblivious or more likely deliberately obtuse, beamed at the general direction of my laptop screen. "Just trying to help, dear," she said. "This space is so cluttered. It's amazing you get any real work done in here at all. When Xander was working from home during that lockdown, he kept his desk immaculate." My blood pressure skyrocketed. This wasn't just an interruption, it was a calculated act of sabotage. She was actively trying to undermine me in front of my biggest client. This was it, the final, unforgivable straw. "Thank you, Angela. That's quite enough," I said, my voice dangerously calm. I stood up, subtly guiding her towards the door. "I can manage from here." She allowed herself to be ushered out, still muttering about the importance of a tidy workspace. "Just trying to be helpful, you know. Some people just don't appreciate a helping hand." I closed the door behind her, my hand shaking, and leaned against it for a moment, taking a ragged breath. I turned back to the screen, my face flushed. "My sincere apologies, Mr. Henderson," I said, mortified. "Family, you know." He gave a curt nod, his expression unreadable. "Let's get back to the specs, shall we, Trinity? We're on a tight schedule." We managed to finish the call, though my concentration was shot. I fumbled a few explanations, my mind replaying Angela's brazen intrusion. As soon as we disconnected, I slumped in my chair, fury, and a strange cold clarity washing over me. She knew. She knew I was on an important call. She'd heard me talking. This wasn't clumsiness or misguided helpfulness. This was a declaration of war. She was actively trying to damage my career. That night, after another silent, tension-filled dinner where Xander barely met my eyes, I waited until the house was quiet. The in-laws had retired early, Paul complaining of a headache, probably from the sheer psychic weight of Angela's negativity, and Chloe glued to some reality show in the guest room. Xander was already ensconced on the sofa, a clear message that our marital standoff continued. I went to my office. The camera I'd installed earlier had captured Angela's entire performance in crystal clear HD, including her dismissive wave as she left my office and the smug little smile that played on her lips once she thought she was out of my sight. I re-watched it, my anger solidifying into a steely resolve. She wanted to play games? Fine. Two could play. I took down the small camera I'd initially placed on the shelf above my monitor. It was good, but it wasn't perfect. I needed an angle that would capture everything, unequivocally. I found a new spot, even more discreet, tucked into a decorative plant on the corner of my desk. It had a perfect, unobstructed view of my entire workstation, my chair, and anyone who approached it. I spent a good hour testing the angle, the lighting, ensuring the feed to my phone was flawless. Xander found me there, fiddling with the plant, just as I was making the final adjustments. He stood in the doorway, his arms crossed, his expression wary. "What are you doing now?" he asked, his voice flat, devoid of its usual warmth. The air between us was still thick with the residue of our fight. I didn't look at him. "Just adjusting my webcam," I said, my voice equally cool, "making sure the angle is right for my calls." He walked further into the room, his eyes narrowed, suspicious. He peered at the plant, then at the tiny, almost invisible lens. "That doesn't look like the webcam you showed me yesterday. That one was on the shelf." I shrugged, feigning nonchalance. "This one has a better microphone. Decided to switch them out." I busied myself, pretending to adjust a leaf. He didn't say anything for a long moment, just watched me. The silence stretched, taut and uncomfortable. I could feel his gaze on me, questioning, disapproving. But he didn't press further. He just sighed, a heavy, weary sound, and turned to leave. "Just try not to make things worse, Trinity," he said quietly, his back to me, before walking out and closing the door softly behind him. "Make things worse? Oh, Xander, you have no idea." As I tested the new camera feed on my phone, watching a crystal-clear image of my empty chair and pristine desk, a grim smile played on my lips. The trap was set. Perfectly. "All right, Angela?" I whispered to the empty room, my voice a low, determined murmur. "Let's see what you tidy next." The point of no return had been crossed. There was no going back now. The house felt like a pressure cooker, the lid rattling. Every interaction was strained, every shared space a potential battleground. Xander and I were orbiting each other like hostile planets, our communication reduced to curt necessities. He was still sleeping on the sofa, a silent, daily reproach. The in-laws, sensing the shift in our dynamic, seemed to tread a little more carefully around me, though Angela's barbs, while perhaps less frequent, were sharper, more pointed when they did come. She redoubled her efforts to undermine me through Xander. At dinner, which I cooked with mechanical precision, avoiding anything too adventurous or too bland, Angela launched into a monologue. "You know, Xander," she began, carefully dabbing her lips with a napkin, "I was talking to Brenda from next door, her daughter, Melissa, the one who married that lovely dentist. Well, Melissa just got a fantastic new job, head of marketing for a big firm, wonderful benefits, a company car, proper pension. She's really setting them up for the future." She paused, then looked pointedly at me, then back at Xander. "It's so important for a wife to contribute in a tangible way, for her husband's peace of mind, you know. a job with benefits, and a pension, for his sake. Chloe, ever the dutiful parrot, chimed in. Yeah, Xander, what if Trinity gets sick or something? Does her, internet thingy have sick pay? I continued eating my perfectly bland chicken, my expression unreadable. Inside, I was a coiled viper, but outwardly, I projected calm. I was meticulously saving footage each night, Angela's snide remarks, Chloe's eye rolls, Paul's passive agreement. The digital evidence folder on my secure cloud drive was growing. I was counting down the minutes until their departure, now just 2 days away. The strain was immense. I was barely sleeping, fueled by caffeine and a simmering rage. My work was suffering, my concentration fractured. The joy I usually found in my projects was replaced by a grim determination to just get through the day, to survive their presence. One evening, after another excruciatingly polite dinner, I retreated to my office, ostensibly to work. In reality, I needed to review the day's recordings. Xander was in the living room with his parents, the murmur of the television a dull backdrop to the tension. Chloe was, as usual, glued to her phone. I queued up the footage from the living room camera. Angela, thinking she was unobserved, had been examining one of my design books, her lip curled in a sneer as she flipped through the pages. Then, she'd casually placed her damp teacup directly onto its glossy cover, leaving a prominent ring. Small, yes, but deliberate. Always deliberate. I was so engrossed in the playback, my jaw tight with fury, that I didn't hear Xander approach. He'd come to the office, perhaps to attempt another strained conversation, or maybe just to retrieve a book. He stopped dead in the doorway, his eyes fixing on my laptop screen. The color drained from his face. He looked from the screen to me, his expression horrified, then utterly betrayed. Trinity, are you still spying on my family? He demanded, his voice low and shaking with a mixture of disbelief and anger. I closed the laptop slowly. I told you, Xander. I'm documenting. Documenting what, Trinity? He stepped into the room, his hands clenched at his sides. My mother leaving a teacup on a book? Is that your smoking gun? Is this what our marriage has come to? Secret recordings? Mistrust? Mistrust? I stood up, facing him. You want to talk about mistrust, Xander? How about the mistrust I feel every time your mother opens her mouth in my direction? How about the fact that I can't trust her not to damage my property, or try to sabotage my career, or systematically undermine my confidence? She wouldn't, he insisted, though his voice lacked its earlier conviction. The video evidence, however brief his glimpse, had clearly shaken him. She can be critical, okay? I get that. But she wouldn't deliberately sabotage you. Wouldn't she? I shot back. I have hours of footage, Xander, that says otherwise. Little things, big things, constant, unending negativity and disrespect. And you? You just tell me I'm being too sensitive. This isn't the way, Trinity, he pleaded, his anger giving way to a desperate frustration. This vendetta you're on, it's tearing us apart, can't you see that? What's tearing us apart, Xander? I said, my voice trembling with a pain that was almost physical. Is your refusal to stand by me, your refusal to see what they are doing. You keep choosing them, their feelings, their old-fashioned ways, over me, over us. That's not true, isn't it? When have you ever told your mother to back off, to respect me, to respect my home, my work? He stared at me, his face a mask of conflict. He opened his mouth, then closed it again. He had no answer. I'm trying to protect what's mine, Xander, I said, my voice dropping to a weary whisper. My career, my sanity, my home. And yes, even our marriage. though right now it feels like I'm the only one fighting for it in a way that actually addresses the problem. By spying on my parents? He repeated, his voice laced with anguish. This is how you fight for our marriage? By escalating things to this level? By treating my family like criminals? They are acting like vandals in my life, I cried, the carefully constructed walls around my emotions finally crumbling. And you just watch. You tell me to be nicer, to be more understanding. Well, I'm done understanding, Xander. I'm done being sensitive. I'm done being a doormat. Tears streamed down my face, hot and angry. He looked at me, his own eyes filled with a terrible sadness. This is insane, Trinity. You're going to destroy our family, he yelled, the words a raw echo of his previous outburst, but this time freighted with a deeper despair. He didn't slam the door this time. He just turned and walked away, the slump of his shoulders speaking volumes. He didn't go to the sofa. He went into our bedroom and closed the door, leaving me alone in the office, the silence heavy with unspoken accusations and the wreckage of our fight. I looked at the blank screen of my closed laptop. The footage of Angela sneering, of Chloe's disdain, of Paul's silent approval, was burned into my mind. Xander's words, "You're going to destroy our family," echoed in my ears. My heart ached with a profound sorrow. This wasn't what I wanted. I loved Xander, but I couldn't let them win. I couldn't let Angela break me. Some things, I whispered to the empty room, my voice thick with unshed tears, are worth fighting for, even if it means breaking others apart to save yourself. The victory, if it came, would be Pyrrhic. But the alternative, a slow erosion of my spirit, my career, my marriage under Angela's relentless assault, was unthinkable. I had to see this through, no matter the cost. The final day before their scheduled departure dawned grey and oppressive, mirroring the atmosphere inside the house. Xander and I were polite strangers, exchanging only essential words. He'd slept in our bed, but on the very edge, a vast, cold expanse between us. The in-laws, perhaps sensing the imminent end of their reign, were subdued, almost eerily quiet at breakfast. Or maybe they were just tired of their own negativity. I wouldn't have blamed them. I had one last critical project to wrap up before a self-imposed vacation I desperately needed after this ordeal. It was a rush job for a new, high-profile client, and the deadline was unforgiving. End of day. The stress was a vice around my chest, amplified by the silent war with Xander and the lingering, suffocating presence of his family. I retreated to my office immediately after breakfast, the door clicking shut behind me with a sense of finality. I needed to focus, to block out everything else and just power through. My custom-built laptop, my beautiful, powerful machine, hummed reassuringly. For the next few hours, it was just me, my code, and the ticking clock. Around mid-morning, I heard movement outside my office door. A shuffling sound. Angela. I could feel her presence, like a change in barometric pressure. I ignored it, my fingers flying across the keyboard, my eyes glued to the screen. I was deep in a complex coding sequence, the kind that required absolute concentration. "Trinity, dear?" Her voice, saccharine sweet, pierced through my focus. She didn't knock. The door creaked open. "Angela, I'm really busy," I said, not looking up, my tone sharper than I intended. "I have a major deadline." "Oh, I know, dear, I know. Always busy with your little computer things." She drifted into the room, not approaching my desk, just hovering, near the bookshelf, near the window. "I was just wondering if you'd seen my reading glasses. I seem to have misplaced them." "I haven't, Angela," I said, trying to re-immerse myself in the code. "Maybe check the guest room?" Yes, perhaps." But she didn't leave. She lingered, picking up a small framed photo from my shelf, a picture of me winning a design award. She squinted at it. Such a shame Xander couldn't be there for this. He was working, I suppose? A real job, keeping him busy. My jaw tightened. He was there, Angela. He took the photo. Oh, right. She put it down, slightly askew. I needed a file from the printer in the hallway. A crucial reference document. Excuse me, I said, pushing my chair back. I had to get this done. I couldn't let her derail me now. I squeezed past her, my patience worn paper thin. I was gone for perhaps 30 seconds, just long enough to grab the printout. As I stepped back towards my office, I heard it. A sickening, unmistakable crash. Not a small crash, like a mug falling. A heavy, expensive, catastrophic crash. My blood ran cold. I rushed back into the office. And there it was, my laptop, my beautiful, powerful, custom-built, top-of-the-line laptop, my entire livelihood, the cornerstone of my career, lay shattered on the hardwood floor, its screen spider-webbed with cracks, the casing split open like a broken clamshell. Angela stood over it, her hand flying to her mouth in a gesture of exaggerated, mock horror. Oh, my dear Trinity! Oh my goodness! I am so terribly clumsy! Her eyes, however, were wide, not with shock, but with a strange, almost gleeful light. I just barely brushed against it. It was so close to the edge. It just toppled. I stared at the wreckage of my machine, the thousands of dollars, the countless hours of work it represented, lying in pieces. A wave of cold, clear rage washed over me, so potent it almost buckled my knees. But beneath it, strangely, was a flicker of something else. Vindication. Xander burst into the room, drawn by the noise, his face pale. What happened? What was that crash? He saw the laptop, then looked at his mother, then at me. Angela seized the moment. Oh, Xander, it was dreadful. I was just standing here and I must have bumped the desk, just a tiny bit. And Trinity's computer, it just fell. I feel absolutely terrible. Then, as if delivering the punchline to a joke only she understood, she added, her voice laced with a barely concealed triumphant smirk. Well, I suppose this means you'll need to find a real job now, won't you, Trinity? Her words hung in the air, brutal and undeniable. The mask was off. This was no accident. This was the culmination of her week-long campaign. This was her victory lap. I looked from the shattered remains of my professional life to Angela's smug, victorious face. Xander stood frozen, looking utterly torn, his gaze flicking between his mother's feigned distress and my stunned silence. Chloe and Paul had appeared in the doorway, drawn by the commotion, their expressions a mixture of curiosity and apprehension. The rage was still there, a white-hot inferno. But my mind was surprisingly, terrifyingly clear. I had her. Oh, I had her. I met Angela's smug gaze, my own expression carefully unreadable. I even managed a small, tight smile. Don't worry, Angela, I said, my voice surprisingly calm, almost gentle. Accidents happen. We'll sort everything out tomorrow before you leave. The slight flicker of unease in her eyes, the momentary faltering of her triumphant smirk, was immensely, profoundly satisfying. She'd overplayed her hand. She thought she'd won. She had no idea the game was just about to enter its final, most devastating round, and I held all the cards. The next morning, the atmosphere was thick with a strange, artificial cheerfulness emanating from the King contingent. Their bags were packed and lined up by the front door like soldiers ready for retreat, but their demeanor was anything but defeated. Angela was practically humming, a self-satisfied little tune, as she flitted around